Hey, everyone. Thank you for attending Next.js Conference and welcome to the Next.js Conference After Party. I'm Lee, and I'm the head of developer relations at Vercel. And we're really excited to have you here today to chat with our speakers, chat with some special guests, and learn more about all the exciting features and improvements in Next.js 11 and also in Next.js Live. For those of you who are joining in right now, I'm just going to quickly summarize some of the things that we covered at the conference. First off, congratulations and thank you to all of our speakers who joined and did such an amazing job. We really appreciate you. At the conference, we announced Next.js 11, which has a brand new conformance system with an ESLint integration. We announced improvements to the Next.js image component, which make it easier to use images by importing and referencing the source, as well as blur up placeholders. And that's just the start. There's so much more that we're excited about with Next.js 11. Go to nextjs.org/11 to check it out. And we also introduced Next.js Live Mode, which will drastically change how we build Next.js applications by allowing you to code in the browser using cutting edge technology. I'm really excited if you can't tell. I'm very excited that you're all here for the after party. And to get started, I want to let everyone know the process. We have a channel in Discord called Next.js Conf After Party Questions. And you can ask questions there. If you can hear my Discord sound, you can hear it pinging. So ask questions there, and we will be putting them into the chat and answering everything live. So ask whatever you would like. But to get started, I would like to bring on our CEO.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is incredible.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us live and answering questions. The event was great. You did a great job. I loved everything that we announced. How are you?
Yeah, but before we get to questions, I have something really exciting. We have one more thing. We're going to announce something very special. You can go to nextjs.org/give, and this is a very special drop. You can already see our button, the drop party button underneath if you're on nextjs.org/conf. And this is a special drop that is benefiting women who code. We'll have this special swag that you can just purchase. All the proceeds go to a great cause. So yeah, very excited about the conference and very excited that we get to do this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, before we dive into bringing the speakers on, I just have one question to set the tone. Could you tell me more about what inspired Next.js Live? Because it's amazing, and I'm really excited about the future of Next.js.
For sure. I think the thing that Next.js has always been about is this awesomeness, this performance, this great developer experience. That's our roots. I fell in love with React when I saw what it was possible with hot module replacement, meaning you type, you see your changes in real time. But that was, to me, the single player version of React. That we have the ability today to make that multiplayer gets me extremely excited. And I think the other side of it is not just React, is the web, right? So like the web has all this amazing technology for both consuming and editing at the same time. We've all been able to, go to a website, go to the dev tools and make an edit. So to me, the web has always felt like this incredibly dynamic medium for creation as well as consumption. So hopefully with Next.js Live, we'll see a lot more of this creation on the web, and I'm just really excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And next, I want to invite our speakers onto the stage and do some introductions. So without further ado, I will bring them onto the stage. Hey, everyone. We're really excited to have you here. Why don't we go around and do some introductions? Let's start with Shubi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shubi. I'm the tech lead and engineering manager of Chrome's engagement with open source tools and frameworks. We actually just published our blog post giving this initiative a name. It is now called Aurora. Please go check out web.dev/Aurora. Thanks.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Hussein?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hussein. I am a developer relations engineer in the Chrome team. I've been working with Shubi and a few others in the Aurora initiative. I've also been helping actually land Conformance and ESLint in Next.js.
Awesome. And Lydia?
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm just an independent software engineer, but I've been working with Next for years now. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone when I say that. I'm always just blown away by Vercel's announcement. Like, even when you think that Next can't get any better, it's always better.
Awesome. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go around, and I have some questions just that I would like to ask you all. And then we're also monitoring the Discord for more questions from the community. So to kick things off, maybe we'll pass back to Shubi. You've been at Google for over 10 years. That's incredible. I would love to hear more about that journey and how Google has changed since you've been there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing that I think has changed is the ability to like keep up with what's going on around the company. I remember back in the day, we would all, personally go to our Friday TGIF all hands and line to get the best seats and look forward to what Larry and Sergey had to kind of show and the jokes they would crack. But it's just impossible to keep up anymore. And I think that's obviously what happens with growth.
That's awesome. Yeah, a decade is a long time, and it's been just an incredible development over those years. So it's really, really interesting to see that. And Hussein, you've also been at Google for, I think, like 3 years? Is that accurate?
That is correct. In a month, it'll be coming up to 3 years now.
That's amazing. I would love to hear more from your perspective about how Google works with open source.
Absolutely, yeah. So I can also just talk from a dev role perspective. Many of us in the Chrome and web team, we try to work with many open source solutions. We also try to make sure that we are, telling developers what tools they can use, how they should use it the right way. And then Shubi and a few others, I think about a year or 2 years ago, we kind of realized, okay, we spend so much time telling developers what to do. Now we need to start focusing on improving the tools that they actually use. And then that's how Aurora kind of kicked off. And we've kind of worked very closely with the Next.js team ever since. And we've been expanding to other frameworks as well.
Nice. Yeah, what's interesting too is there's parallels to Guillermo as well and our relationship with open source. I'd love to hear more about how you envision Vercel working with the open source community too, and what that relationship looks like.
Yeah, for sure. For me, the entire company was born out of open source. Even personally, my entire career has been born out of open source. And I think for developers, it's crucial that they get access to both the tool itself, but the ability to influence the future of that tool. So our process with adding any feature to Next.js has always been about open RFCs, listening to feedback, engaging with developers on Twitter, on GitHub, on Discord. Anyway, really, I just love just making the tool better as a response to the feedback of users. So that's primarily how we've been doing this, always in the open. And in terms of the relationship to the platform, I've always seen it as a very naturally symbiotic relationship where you're making a tool that gives you a programming model, and then you're creating a platform that optimizes for that programming model. So in the case of Next.js, a lot of what we've done is we've seen the transition in cloud from servers to serverless. So we've had an opportunity to create a platform for front-end developers that just makes sense to them. There are no knobs. Everything scales automatically. Everything is fast out of the box. We make a ton of optimizations that front-end developers don't really need to learn the guts of the cloud to do. So when you focus on front-end, I think a lot of the value comes from the infrastructure that you make invisible to teams that are creating incredible experiences on the web that want to publish and scale. And we'll continue to invest in this way. So a lot of the things that we created with the Next.js are open source themselves. So we're going to make we made the conference platform open source. We're going to continue updating that. Next.js Commerce is open source. And we'll continue to release more and more of these examples over time.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about the community, because Lydia's opinion is really unique here, because she's the boots on the ground engineer building these amazing Next.js applications. And you have a really unique perspective. I mean, you're a full-time, remote nomadic engineer. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you also taught yourself how to code. I would love to hear more about that journey, because it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I've been working remotely for years now. It all started kind of like after high school. I didn't really know what to do, and I was already programming, and I didn't even know that it was like an actual career path. Until people were like, I mean, you can actually do this as a job as well. And I went to like a quick boot camp to learn like React or like the latest web development stuff in like 2016. So it was still like brand new back then. And I quickly got introduced to Next.js, I think in like 2017. But yeah, like I've been working remotely for years now, and like getting that valuable feedback from the people on your team has always been one of like the biggest struggles while working from home. I feel like, especially in the past year with COVID. So like Next.js Live is one of those things that I didn't even know like I needed until I heard about it. And like I'm just so excited that people actually get to use it now. It really shows that Vercel is always thinking like at least 2 steps ahead. It's amazing.
Well, a lot of the improvements we've made to the image component have came from direct feedback from the community. So we're so grateful for everyone for giving us feedback and helping us improve that. That's actually a great transition to bring on a few more people we have backstage that I would love to introduce, Alex and Tim. Please welcome Alex and Tim. And hey. I'll let you both introduce yourself. Let's start with Tim.
Hey, so I'm Tim. I lead the Next.js team at Vercel. I've been at Vercel for 3 years now, and I've been contributing to Next since pretty much the early days, like the first 2 months or so of the project, and later on joined Vercel to work on it.
Awesome. Alex?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alex. I am a software engineer at Google. I work with Shubi and Hussein. And I've been contributing to Next for quite a bit now. Mostly I have been looking at things having to do with images and the image component, which has been something that I've been kind of shepherding along since the beginning of the image component.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to bring you both on stage because we wanted to talk about images a little bit more. We've been listening to your questions in the Discord community, and I actually have 2 pulled up here related to images. The first one, can we use an image tag to optimize background images?
The image component does not, it's not a drop-in replacement for background images, but it should be able to be used to achieve the same effect as whatever you're using a background image for. The image component has a variety of layouts, and one of the layouts is layout fill, which just has the image stretched to fill whatever its containing element is. And in my experience, I haven't yet found a situation where someone was using a background element that they could not do the same thing with the image component in the layout fill. It's not just like, changing the name of the component. It'll be a slightly different structure.
And if someone in the community does find one of those examples, that's just something that they can tell us, and we'll work with them on always improving. And I want to also call out there in terms of our collaboration with the open source community that ever since we launched Image, we've been making lots of improvements based on the excellent feedback, and we'll expect the same this time as well. So try out Image, continue to use it, and let us know how it goes.
Awesome. Another question that I saw that I'd love to talk more about is just how the Chrome team is working with Next.js to benefit that broader ecosystem. Shubi or Hussein or Alex, I would love to hear more about how you're working with frameworks like Next and Nuxt and Angular and some of the interesting things coming.
Yeah, happy to take that one. Yeah, I mean, overall, I just want to clarify our goals here. Like, it's not exclusively to help Next.js, right? Ultimately, it is about promoting that broader ecosystem. Yeah, happy for Hussein and Alex to jump in as well.
So I'll point out, so far, our goal has been to use Next.js as a platform to prove out sort of the ways that we think that frameworks can do things most performantly and in the best way they can, and then to let that sort of diffuse out to the wider ecosystem. And we've already seen a number of situations where other frameworks are adopting work that we have contributed to Next, or adapting it to their own needs.
Yeah, and I want to chime in that, like, ultimately it's about supporting web developers using these open source stacks. And so that's our allegiance is to web developers. And it's really about helping them achieve good UX outcomes. And so we really see an opportunity here for building the gap between the web platform and the frameworks towards helping them in this way. And we've learned, I said this in the talk, that we've learned lessons from Google, and one of those key lessons was, using the tech stack and you working throughout that tech stack, bringing strong defaults and opinionated tooling. And Next.js, Nuxt, and Angular are tools that give us the surface for bringing these opinions. Like, it's not possible to create a font optimization in a vacuum for all React apps or all Vue apps. So this is what is possible now. And we're hoping to establish a standard for both like new and existing frameworks towards what makes sense to support in frameworks by default. So you want to up that bar. And
for me, a good example there, Shubi, is I love the fact that I don't have to read a bunch of blog posts on font optimization, and I always look at the date. Is this 2021? Because the practices continue to evolve. Instead, I can count on the framework embedding these best practices. So it's a way of scaling the web a lot better, and it's awesome. I also wanted to add that a lot of what we learn, especially at Vercel, we collaborate very closely with other framework creators, because at Vercel, we support Nuxt, we support Angular. So for example, we landed image optimization for Nuxt, which is awesome. So if you're using Next or if you're using Nuxt, you get your images optimized at the edge. So that's another great way to collaborate with open source that perhaps is not as obvious in the beginning.
Yeah,
and one thing to point out as like a good example is that Alex spent months on figuring out what the right chunking mechanism is for JavaScript files, which was eventually implemented in Next as an experimental feature. We had people try it out for quite some time, eventually released it as stable to all Next.js apps. All you had to do was upgrade, it worked automatically. And later on, that was adopted by a bunch of other frameworks, and then even like Webpack itself adopted it as well as the standard for Webpack 5. So if you're using, even if you're not using Next and you're using Webpack by itself, you already got these optimizations as well, which came directly out of Shubi's team and Alex's work.
Thanks, Alex. That was a lot of work.
I have another question from the community here about recently released React 18 and server components, and when we can get that back into Next.js. Maybe Tim wants to talk a little bit more about what we've done in Next 11 for React 18 and what we'll do in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So Next.js is React 18. So React 18 alpha is out, so it's not the actual release yet, and they're working with library authors to make sure that all libraries are compatible with React 18 before it goes stable. So that's good to note. I would definitely recommend to look at the React 18 blog post as well on react.js.org, as that outlines the whole plan there. But for the Next.js side, we implemented create root already. If you're using the React 18 alpha, you're going to use create root automatically. It has a few semantic differences with React 17 as is, but it shouldn't break most steps. And we're going to be working towards implementing all the new features that React 18 enables. So it's not even like React 18 by itself, like enabling all these like new features for you to use immediately. It's more so about giving you the building blocks to start adopting concurrent features like use transition and suspense. And then Next.js will neatly integrate with that, and we'll have a like quite some time for your app to migrate and even provide backwards compatibility, so that you don't have to worry per se, like at this point. I want to make that very clear that you at this point don't have to worry about your app being compatible with React 18 immediately, but we'll be working towards like having experimental flags, for example, to use a new suspense-based API as well. And that's currently in the works, so it's like I can't show it a exact example yet, but it's going to allow us to implement a lot of really interesting new optimizations in Next, like partial hydration and basically like partial hydration is making sure that you don't load all the JavaScript needed for the whole app at the start of loading the app. but also streaming rendering, for example, which will allow you to send like HTML faster to the browser once a request comes in. And like all of these basically tie in together with the React Server component demo that the React team gave. And all of this will come neatly integrated into Next.js in the near future. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm extremely excited for server components and the future with the React 8 team. Big shout out to the React core team for doing an amazing job. One question that I had just about the conference in general, the speakers did such an incredible job and their backgrounds and their setups were so amazing. I would love to hear from any of the speakers on how that recording process was. Did you stumble up? Did it go really smooth? Y'all seem like naturals.
One thing I would say is it definitely took a lot of takes. I think that's one thing I always emphasize, and just in general, when you want to make a very polished talk. But I was just so well amazed by how well it was organized, how well it was planned, the setup. Just doing the multiple tapes felt kind of natural after a while. So yeah, no, it was a great process, and I think the Vercel team did a great job.
Yeah, I had a Cinderella moment coming back to my real office.
Yeah, it was done so professionally because like I was in San Francisco, but we made it seem like I was in Amsterdam, and it was the weirdest thing because there were like tulips, we had Dutch cookies, which by the way tasted amazing. And it was just like, oh, I wish this was my actual office. But no, unfortunately, I just have like a sofa. That's my office, a seat.
My main comment is I never make French press coffee, although I do enjoy it. So it's still authentic. But I think the process is part of the fun as well. Not to get too corny, but it's like a good experimental flag that gets iterated on for many takes until you have the final product. So it's part of the fun.
So don't come at him with the French press takes for the coffee people. I have more questions from the community related to, we have one around conformance. How can we customize conformance to include or remove rules?
Yeah, so the way conformance is built out now, if you do not have an ESLint configuration set up in your application, all you need to do is run nextlint. You'll have the commands there to just add any required packages, and it's up and running. And the default ESLint config will already be set up. But if you already have one and or for any reason want to modify and make some rules stricter than they are or turn them off, all you need to do is actually just go into your ESLint config for any rules that you want, extend the rules property, and define them however you'd like. And the ESLint documentation in Next.js actually covers this pretty well.
Yeah, I guess one comment I have is like ultimately it's about kind of, as a team, deciding what objectives you care about. So that's why we kind of have that core web vitals as a rule set, right? So that's a priority. I strongly recommend like buying into the entire rule set if that's how you can achieve the loading performance.
Absolutely. Yeah. The idea is, I think, as developers, you wouldn't need to worry about this. You just follow the configuration we've set out for you. But if for any reason you need to modify it, you can. But as Shubi mentioned, we've kind of put some thought into what the rules should be for the best loading baseline.
I'll just quickly, again, shout out the two amazing blog posts that you have. If people watching would like to learn more, we have web.dev/Aurora as well as web.dev/conformance. So go check those out if you would like to learn more about those efforts. We have another question. Will there still be another Next.js conference this fall? So we know this was a special event. Can we share some news if there will be a Next.js conference this fall? Jermo?
Yeah, so this was just a special edition. Our annual event will still happen, and we have already are working on the amazing things that we're going to announce. So stay tuned. I'm really excited. We have some surprises still that are coming. So yeah, literally tune in.
We have another question as well about Next.js, about the Create React App migration script that was released in Next.js 11. So this is actually something that we didn't get a chance to talk about in the keynote, but slipped in there So the community is wondering, could we talk a little bit more about this migration script and how will it help me out as a Create React app developer?
Yeah, I'll take that one, I guess. Yeah, so we basically, like, over the last few months, and this is also in the blog post, that we got a lot of requests from people basically like, hey, how do I migrate my Create React app to Next.js if I already built it out, or if I'm just getting started and I'm like used to building a Create React app. So what we did is we built a code mod for a complete Create React app to convert those into a Next.js app. So it puts all the files in the right place. It imports your like app file, for example. It strips out all the code that Next does for you automatically, like the React on the render and that kind of stuff. And then what it does is it basically it does a lot of other like movements that you have to do generally yourself. So like CSS into underscore app and that kind of stuff. And then what you get out of it is basically a Next.js app that runs exactly like the Create React app. And in order to achieve that, we also added a new mode into Next that you can enable for Create React app compat. So generally, like, we don't recommend that for new apps, but if you're moving from Create React app to Next, you can enable that mode so that some of the behaviors that we do for compilation are the same as what you get in Create React app or very similar. That does have a slight performance impact on your development lifecycle, but for like moving your app, that is generally fine. And what we've seen in general, which is nice to note as well, is that for all the apps that we've tested, we've noticed that the development server and the production build are generally more optimized than the app was just as a Create React app. So that like, there's a nice performance win there by just running that script, basically, that converts it. Would be good to note also that it's currently experimental, which means that we're still working on it. We've tried that on many apps. We're still looking for more. So if your application had, like, you're building a Create React application, you want to try migrating it to Next, you can try to run that command. We'll give you a link to provide feedback if it doesn't work. And if you have an open source project, please reach out to us as well, as we'd love to run it on your project and try to figure out all these like edge cases where it doesn't work.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm really excited about all the things that have been released in Next.js 11. I mean, between image support being better and ESLint integration, conformance, all these awesome things. I would love to hear what others' maybe favorite thing that's came out with 11 or just recently with Next.js and what they're excited to use. I think we have a great group of people who have different experiences and different use cases. Like, I would love to hear Alex's take from, you know, even someone who's worked on the image component, or maybe Lydia's opinion being as, you know, the boots on the ground engineer who's going to take this back and apply some of these new features on their projects. Maybe start with Alex. What's your favorite thing you're excited about?
Yeah. Geez, I feel like I ought to say something other than one of the things that I worked on, but we'll focus on those lately. I really am looking forward to the new workflow around images. I think the static image is a great way to, when you're getting a new project off the ground and you just want to get an image in there fast and you know, perform it, and in a way that is going to be easy to expand later on to use more of the full features of the image component. I think that's a nice workflow. And also the blurry placeholder, I think, is just a really exciting feature. And I like that I like that we've gotten the feature out there in a way that people are gonna like using. And then also, once people have started using it, we have a lot of leeway to make performance enhancements on the back end to just keep making that feature better, even in ways maybe people aren't going to notice right away, but then they'll see their performance get better over time. I think it's going to be a good platform going forward.
Indeed. What about you, Lydia?
I probably also have to say the image component is personally, because it just makes my own life so much easier. You know, there are so many ways in which you can optimize an app, but you still have to kind of repeat the same process every time you're building an application. And I just love that Vercel takes so much away, like so many small mistakes that you could make. But also, I think it's more the mindset that I'm super excited about. Like, Next.js 11 really shows like how, you know, open source is the future and how much a product can benefit from like the work of a greater community combined with the work and the expertise from companies like Google. Like I'm just super excited for the future of both like the web and, you know, like developer tooling in general after this announcement. And it's just awesome to see like this innovation coming from, you know, like an open source and community driven company like Vercel. It's I'm super excited.
Awesome. We do have a few questions I've just been monitoring about Next.js Live. Maybe we could shift and talk about this a little bit. How does Next.js Live save the code that you edit? Guillermo, maybe you want to take this one?
Yeah, so one of the really cool things, I mentioned it briefly in the keynote, is the technology that makes Next.js Live work is local first. So you're always interacting directly with the web browser. There's no remote computer that's running your dev server. It's basically like using the browser to edit your project directly. So this is made possible by all the recent innovations like Service Worker and all the awesome new web APIs like ES modules. So basically what we're doing is we're taking the source that can be loaded from any source really, but even locally. And then we're doing the least amount of work possible on top of that code to render it on the screen. So as you're typing, you're directly editing the live representation of that. So live is an apt name for this technology. But the other really cool thing is that we can broadcast those changes as they happen to other running instances of Next.js Live in other people's web browsers. So this is what makes the real-time collaboration possible. Now, both the source or the origin of the code and the eventual output of the code can be anything. So in the future, we can even plug it right into your local text editor and then dispatch changes to a Next.js Live URL in real time. And then when the changes are made in Next.js Live in real time, we can send them over to the next step, whether it's GitHub, whether it's a live deploy, a live preview, or even back into your editor. So we're still working on all the integrations and all the things that are possible once you have this technology. And we encourage people to try it out, give us feedback, sign up for updates on nextjs.org/live. If you leave your email, we'll keep you posted on how this project evolves. But overall, it's just very exciting that we're sort of marrying this idea of local development with a real-time collaboration of those changes that you make to your project.
And as a follow-up, someone's asking if we have VS Code embedded. Are they seeing that right? Is that Monaco?
Yeah, so we do a lot to make this a seamless experience. So we're preloading the editor behind the scenes, and then when you press code, we're basically running something that's quite close to your VS Code copy. That's obviously constrained to running well in the context of this collaboration. So we're not anticipating that right off the bat you're going to go to Next.js Live and you're going to throw away all your existing tools. But the editing experience is quite powerful, obviously very real time, faster in many ways. So the fact that we're, again, reusing all this incredible web-based infrastructure. So kudos, obviously, to the VS Code and Monaco teams in that we're all creating this reusable components for the web. Another example is we're using the Replicache component. It's a real-time engine that we use for synchronization. It allows us to make local optimistic edits that, as I mentioned, can happen offline even, and then can get reconciliated with a remote source. We were able to leverage that component, and anybody can also use that component in any context of any app. We're using Sucrase for manipulating the code as little as possible, such that it's real time. We measured changes from editor to screen in even less than 10 milliseconds in many cases. All of those components came together from the open source community, and it's just a pleasure that the web has become so composable. In a big part also thanks to React, that has given us this incredible and rich component model to to assemble pieces that are so complex, but deliver such a great experience.
That's amazing. So much incredible open source work there that's helped contribute to that. Here's a good question. Does the new script tag have timing or interactive properties that can be set for lazy loading? So waypoints or contextual views and modals. So I think the larger question is, how can I utilize lazy loading with the new script tag?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many follow-up questions to that. Like, again, to clarify, the script loader is intended for third-party scripts. So that's kind of really what it's meant for. And we definitely started with a focus on initial loading. And the reason for that is that that initial loading sequence is super critical to users even landing on pages, because user abandonment is a big risk. And so we really want to kind of safeguard that. And so that's just the kind of context in terms of like how we ended up creating the script component. And it has these specific timings relevant to, like the application boot up. And so that's what it's in relationship to, as opposed to like, like lazy loading is more about like what's in the viewport. So if there are good use cases though for third parties, we're definitely open to supporting that. And that's why I'm like, I would love to learn more.
Yeah, I think we're going to see so many developers take advantage of the script component to optimize performance in their applications. And we're seeing other questions around people in the Next.js community who really care about performance. So any plans to include some kind of performance analytics or tracing and API routes, maybe something like a New Relic or a Datadog to get more insight into how those API routes are performing. Tim, maybe you could talk about this.
Yeah, we're working on something, but stay tuned. I can't share too much yet.
Yeah, so I can also add kind of what we're thinking about at a high level is we think that the debuggability and observability of Next.js is an absolute top priority. You should be able to understand very deeply where time is going. This goes, for example, in builds. We have very verbose logs, obviously, but we want to let developers even get deeper insight into, okay, like, where's time going here? I'm pre-rendering a page. Was I waiting on my CMS or my headless e-commerce provider giving me the data? Or am I hitting some sort of concurrency limit and so on? So there's that we're doing a lot of work to add more observability there, more traces for APIs as well. So a lot of the feedback that we get is, how can I, debug once I've shipped? And that's like the beauty of serverless functions, for example, in Vercel, is they're making your project more dynamic without shipping new code, without doing static generation and things like that. And that has a higher need for very deep observability. So integrations with services like Datadog, we're working very, very closely on, but also even more observability out of the box with Next.js and Vercel Analytics.
Another question on the image component. Everyone loves this. Does the image component have the ability to add custom image placeholders, or does it use a blurred image? Alex, maybe you could talk about how we actually generate that blurred image for the placeholder.
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about how we generate it and also about what it is. Right now, the image that's used as placeholder is just a tiny image that then gets blown up and blurred to be used as placeholder. So currently, though you can provide your own tiny image, which is what you need to do if you want to. Right now, what you need to do if you want to integrate with a, your own sort of remote image source, because the blowing up and blurring is kind of built into the image component right now. You could not, for instance, provide like, if you had a different sort of image, if you want to use a colored square or something, you can't do that right now. I will say that, like I mentioned earlier, I see the most parts of the image component, and especially the blurred placeholder, as kind of a platform to build on. I would love to hear feedback from the community, and I can definitely see us adding other placeholder modes in the future, and just generally building out use cases beyond what is present right now, which is blurry placeholders automatically generated for statically imported images, or which you can provide yourself for dynamically imported or remote images.
Nice. Thank you. Another somewhat related question. So how does this new improvements to Next image and how does the work being done with Next script, ultimately, how do they help you get better SEO, better performance? I would love to hear from Hussein on, with ESLint and giving developers these tools to make better decisions and help put that guidance into the framework. How can we then help get better performance, better SEO as the end result?
Yeah, I can definitely talk about this with context to like ESLint and Conformance. So, when we built out the whole Conformance model, we definitely focused on performance and having the right actionable rules to make sure the app stays performant. But we're also open to including rules that can help, SEO or any other thing. So one, for example, is if you place the title tag and using the wrong Next head component, we'll tell you to use the right one instead. Use it in the document page as opposed to per page level. So I think that is kind of things that I think ESLint will help, especially when developers are not too aware and they're using the wrong component for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I want to chime in with Google's recent announcement. There is now a clear relationship between SEO and metrics, scored by vitals, loading performance, and so that also just gives us a very clear connection. That doesn't mean that we won't be adding other additional features supporting other things beyond scored by vitals for SEO. There are many other aspects, and definitely makes sense to support features for those. And similarly for image, I would say it directly affects your LCP metric, right? And now there's a direct relationship with SEO as well.
Keep going.
I was just saying, for anyone who's not familiar, the LCP is the largest contentful paint, which is the main thing that we expect to see the image component help, because for most sites or a lot of sites, the largest element on the page is an image.
I'll just quickly throw up a little banner here. I believe it's web.dev/vitals if you want to learn more about core web vitals. So go check those out. They're very important to help you understand how you can optimize performance in your application. I'm personally really excited to try all these things out, put them in vercel.com, nextjs.org, my personal apps, and make these applications as fast as possible. I have a couple of related questions I'm going to batch together. Starting off with, first off, how do I get this Next.js live URL? And what is going on with this code editing? How is it synced? And finally, is this only a Vercel thing?
Yeah, I'll start with the last because it kind of relates to the whole model that we're creating. So the dev engine is just Next.js. As I mentioned in the keynote, we're continuing to make Next.js faster. And we're expecting that the technology that powers Next.js live today, it's quite experimental. It'll just be part of the Next.js development server and open source engine that we have. However, everything that you do locally with Next Live has to be synchronized somewhere at the end of the day, and it has to go through the cloud. And this is kind of the same model that we follow today with Next and Vercel, which is you write your code with Next and then you deploy to Vercel. Very similar here. You write code on top of the Next.js dev engine, and then you basically synchronize and collaborate with Vercel. I think what's new and which is really exciting is that this was basically impossible before, right? Like you couldn't really collaborate. It's an entire new real-time infrastructure. And we're very grateful that we're working with partners like Replicash and figuring out how to do really fast synchronization of code over the wire and things like that. So the saving part, I think, is what's interesting is that once Vercel has the code, it can, for example, connect to your GitHub integration. So it kind of continues a normal route of any application deployment. I would say the only difference here is that it's faster, right? Like you get your code, you see it live, you can share it live. A key component as well here is that once we save the changes that you make to the code, they're immediately available. So something I really liked about the keynote is that we show how when you refresh the live URL that someone shares with you, we're basically loading the most recent version of that down to the last keystroke that was made seconds ago in under a second. So we just load instantly. So to Alex's point, the LCP of Next Live is really fast compared to, imagine waiting for a long build so that you can share the progress or status of your project. So that's one of the things that I'm most in love with, is this idea of we save, we save your code change to the cloud really quick, and then you can share instantly without waiting on a build.
Awesome. I like this question a lot because now as a full-time remote worker, it's been a transformation for me. And we have the community asking, how many of you all work remotely? I can speak for the Vercel folks. We're all remote. The entire company is remote. What about the others?
Yeah, I mean, on the Google side, well, like, obviously everyone has been remote in the last year or so. And we're still waiting to see like kind of guidance in terms of what the new post-pandemic world looks like.
Mm-hmm. And Lydia obviously is remote indeed, full time.
Yep. I don't know.
I guess we're all, I guess we're all remote here, which, by the way, it's as you said, Lee, it's such good timing because we're noticing that in this new present and future of work, that's another motivation. When the question came up, like, what are the motivations for Next Live? I would say a non-trivial motivation is we're all working remotely, and we have to share our changes and collaborate on web projects faster. So it's good timing that we're seeing so many people and so many companies become accepting of remote work.
Indeed. This one's interesting. Is there any work going on around critical CSS inlining out of the box in Next.js?
Indeed. We already have critical CSS inlining behind a flag. So it's called Optimize CSS. And so please check it out. It's already enabled by default in Angular, for instance, and we've seen good success with it. And we are optimistic that we could enable it in Next.js as well. So yeah, user feedback would be super helpful at this stage.
Yeah, to add on to that, there is an experimental flag that you can enable to try it out already. If you look for discussions, I believe there's a discussion open by Rolf from Shubi's team that's asking about feedback to try it out and figure out if like the current defaults are the right ones for all apps.
Nice. Another question for Tim. What does the future of layouts look like in Next.js? This is a community favorite.
Yeah, it's one of the most requested features, which is also why we want to make sure that we do it right. So we've been working on a proposal for it for quite a while, just trying to figure out what the right solution for it is. Especially looking to the future, like React 18, concurrent features, making sure that like the suspense boundaries work in such a way that your UX is still good, and then also tying it into partial iteration and a lot of other optimizations that we can do on top of layouts. But we're also investigating like other avenues to give you the same kind of experience, the same kind of optimization there without having to have the like actual layouts concept per se. So there's still a lot of research and development to be done there, but it's definitely something that we're going to tackle in the near future.
That's amazing. Here's one that I can answer. I can take one of these. Any plans for programmatically creating and invalidating incremental static regenerated pages? So if you haven't checked it out, I put out an article recently about ISR and how you can utilize it. It's also in the Vercel documentation if you want to check it out, the Next.js documentation. We're working to improve this even further to allow you to programmatically invalidate pages, invalidate them from the cache, if you would prefer to use that strategy instead of using the stale while revalidate strategy. This is, again, like Tim said, something the team has been thinking about and focusing on for a really long time to make sure that the API is right. This could actually be a really good follow-up question just about open source, which is, you build these APIs and you really have to build them in a way that stands the test of time, because you're making something that has an impact that's being rolled out to companies that are investing in this framework. They're investing their time and resources. And I think that's why sometimes these decisions take long to make sure we do things the right way. I would love to hear both from like the Next.js side, the community side, the Google side, just how we approach putting out open source software and making it maintainable and extendable for the community? Let's start with Tim.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So unlike like smaller projects, we actually end up spending quite a lot of time thinking about any new feature that's being introduced. As Next.js has grown, we've tended to take more time, especially because we now have to consider hundreds of thousands of apps that are out there and that have to upgrade to this latest version, which is really important insofar that if we add these new optimizations to your developer experience or your user experience, or like the optimized loading that Shubi's team worked on, or font optimization, that kind of stuff, we want to make sure that all Next.js apps out there that are currently in production can get all these optimizations for free. So we've had this really long-standing policy of making sure that there's not too many breaking changes in major releases. Like a good example of that is that the upgrading guide now has upgrading steps for a feature that was removed in Next.js 4, and we're currently at Next.js 11. And we've just like provided backwards compat all the way back to that version. And it's now being removed for performance reasons. So like making sure that your bundle size, like it's not in your bundle anymore if you're not using it. And a lot of these are also optimized away if they're not used as well. So some of these features are just, like say if you're not using rewrites, you're not going to have the code for rewrites in your browser bundle as well. And basically like we take our time to make sure that the constraints are right, that you don't end up accidentally making your app slower as well by just using the feature. And then also we spend a lot of time not just introducing new features. So a lot of the work that we've been doing the last 6 months has been less about adding features, more about performance. So dev server performance, startup time, size of node modules, so you can install Next quicker using npm or yarn. And also the production builds. So like one part of that is like upgrading to Webpack 5, but also leveraging a lot of the work that has gone into Webpack 5 that allows for like faster builds, for example, like build caching. So like an example is you can now upgrade to the latest version of Next. You'll get Webpack 5 enabled. If you didn't have custom Webpack configuration, it's just going to work. And suddenly you have a build cache in the background that you didn't have before. That makes your next build significantly faster, like up to 80% faster. Wow. So that's like basically how we approach new features and optimizations. And generally we try to favor optimizing either developer performance, so like DX performance, so like getting something on your screen as fast as possible, and performance optimizations over like adding a lot of new features. Because also those have to be maintained for a really long time. Like I explained, like we have to maintain that for many major versions to make sure that your apps don't break and you get the latest updates.
Yeah, before I joined the Vercel team, that was one of the things that I really appreciated from an API design standpoint was when I updated, going way back, when I updated like from Next 7 to 8 to 9 and get those new features. Luckily, I was able to do that with, almost none sometimes breaking changes, making it really easy for me as I was trying to adopt Next.js at a large e-commerce scale to easily roll that out and, easily roll it out to our team. We have another question.
I was going to say, even for our Create React App migration strategy, we want to make it as painless as possible. We want you to be able to leverage the investment that you already put into your Create React App apps, the entire React ecosystem. So that's all coming with us.
Indeed. Question for Alex. Does the new image blur work on images that live inside of the project folder? So I think the question is around, you can import images locally. Does it also work with any sort of dynamic images?
Yeah, I think I touched on this earlier, but it does not. So the version of blurry placeholder that has shipped so far is kind of the let's call it the MVP blurry placeholder. It's got support for local images, which we can process at build time to generate those tiny version of the images that we want to use as a placeholder. And then if you want to use a remote or a dynamic image, you need to provide that placeholder yourself. And we are looking at ways to make this a more convenient process in the future. But right now, that's probably going to involve looking at your own image serving stack, whatever that is, and looking at the best way to generate a small version of your image. We find maybe 10 pixels wide, a very small version of the image.
And then it also, one thing that we've talked about a little bit in the keynote that I'm really excited about too, is also then extending it for dynamic images. So being able to pass in that blurred data URL, pass in that base64 image, and make it work with your headless CMS, with Datto CMS, whichever one you want to choose. That's really great.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a question about internationalization routing. This is a feature of Next 10. I'm really eager to not have duplicate folders, and I want to have a different route. Could you give any update on internationalized routing? Tim?
So yeah, definitely, I'll take that. So we've been very focused on making sure that we got a lot of performance improvements into Next.js. And we're going to refocus on to like some of the features that are that still could use some development. Like I guess that this question in particular is about you have a page in the pages directory that you want to have available in their multiple languages, so different slugs basically. And that's definitely something that we still have to look at. It's one of the larger feature requests for internationalized routing. We just haven't gotten around to it yet.
One thing I want to add is we're very, very invested in making the overall router and routing experience better. So some questions came out about layouts and sort of nested routing, and this is an area of active exploration.
Awesome. Well, with that, we're running up on an hour. So as we wrap things up, I want to make sure that we have a chance for each of those who have been brought on stage to have a little closing statement. Say whatever you want. It can be as short as possible, or just a shout out or a thank you. Let's start with Guillermo.
So as I mentioned earlier, we're having our annual user conference event still. So this is just the beginning. This is a little preview. This is just a taste of a lot of more improvements to come. So we want to hear a lot of your feedback and ideas, and whether it's that you're migrating a Create React app application, or trying out Next.js Live, or using the improvements for an image component. Let us know how that all goes, and stay tuned for all the next steps that are coming in Next.js.
Hussein?
Yeah, I'd actually want to give a shout out to obviously the Vercel team for being super close with us, letting us test many features on Next.js. But I also want to give a shout out to other engineers on the Aurora initiative on our side. Alex has been amazing shipping the image component and all image kind of work. Ralph has been instrumental in shipping the script component and thinking about font optimizations and third-party scripts. Gerald on our side has been thinking about React 18 and the future of React and conformance and concurrent mode with Next.js. We're a very small team, but I definitely want to make sure everyone on our side actually gets that exposure for all the features that they land.
Shubi?
Yeah, I'll close with saying that, I think we really feel like we have landed on something good here in terms of, we struggled a lot with how to land like predictable outcomes, and we think frameworks was the missing piece into that puzzle. And so I'm really excited that we have been able to start this journey. Obviously, we are super early still, and welcome any feedback from the community. So yeah, check out our blog posts, Aurora and Conformance, and please don't hesitate to send feedback my way.
Lydia?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Vercel that I was able to represent the community that has done such an amazing job on landing on these features and making everyone's life easier, frankly, with everything that they've added. I cannot wait to get started with everything that's just been announced.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to say how excited I am about this collaboration with Vercel and with Next.js. I think it's leading to really great developer outcomes already. I'm excited about a future of the web where a lot of the hard parts about making a great website are handled for you, and you get to focus on the good part of web development.
And finally, Tim.
Yeah, so I basically have two things to say. Like, the first is that it would be good to note that the collaboration that we're doing with Shubi's team, that's now called Aurora, has been going on for quite some time. So if you think this is a new thing, it actually isn't. We've been working with them for I think almost 2 years now. And we've been able to do so many performance improvements and see those propagated through the community. So I'm really grateful for that, and they've been great partners in that. And the other is, if you landed on this live stream and you don't really know what Next.js is, or you want to learn more, go to next.js.org/learn, and you'll get an interactive tour through Next, where you can build your own app, end up with a small blog for yourself. And it's been a really enjoyable way to learn for folks new to Next.js or React as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you to everyone for joining today. I'm going to now move y'all to the backstage. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we can conclude this special event of Next.js conference. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. It's been a blast today, answering questions from the community. I hope you enjoyed the keynote. Go check out all of these amazing links, the links from the Google team, the links from the Vercel team. Give us your feedback on Discord. Feel free to DM me if you have any questions too. And we will see you this fall for another Next.js conference. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your morning, evening, day, wherever you're tuning in from, and we'll talk to you more next time.